Listen to me very carefully right now, because what I'm about to tell you is going to change how you look at celebrity food brands, the Houston Rodeo, and the entire concept of trusting a famous name on a menu. I need you to stop scrolling. I need you to lock in. Because this is not gossip. This is not tea for entertainment. This is a public health crisis that happened in broad daylight at one of the biggest events in the state of Texas, and somehow, people are still defending it. Let me set the scene for you. Imagine you go to the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. You're having a great time. The energy is incredible. You smell food everywhere. And then you see a booth with a name you recognize. A name tied to royalty. A name tied to the most powerful entertainer on the planet Earth. Mama Tina's Gumbo. You think to yourself, this is a once-in-a-lifetime moment. Beyoncé's own mother made this gumbo. Louisiana roots. Authentic recipe. Cultural pride on a plate. You pull out your wallet. You hand over $27. You take that bowl with a smile on your face. And 6 hours later, you're on the side of the road, doubled over, and there's blood coming out of your mouth. That's not a hypothetical. That happened. To a real woman. With a real name. With real medical documentation. And when she tried to tell people about it, they called her a liar. But she wasn't lying. Because the Houston Health Department confirmed every single thing she said. They sent an inspector out. They found violations so serious that they shut the entire booth down and made them throw away every last drop of gumbo on the premises. And I verified it myself. Personally. Because I live in Houston. I picked up my phone, I called the health department, I spoke to a manager, and everything I'm about to break down for you right now is confirmed, documented, and on public record. This is not a rumor. This is not internet drama. This is a real food safety shutdown with real victims and real consequences. Now, before we go any further, do me a favor and smash that like button and hit subscribe, because this story has layers that nobody else is talking about, and there are absolutely people who want this information buried. I'm not going to let that happen. So let's get into it. To fully understand why this situation is so explosive, you need context. You need to understand what Mama Tina's Gumbo represents, and why the entire internet was already on fire about it before the health department ever got involved. Mama Tina is Tina Knowles. If you don't know that name, you know her daughter, Beyoncé Giselle Knowles Carter, the woman who sells out stadiums worldwide. The woman whose fanbase, the Bay Hive, is arguably the most loyal and most aggressive fanbase in all of music. The woman who has transcended entertainment and become a cultural institution. Now Tina Knowles, Beyoncé's mother, has carved out her own lane. She's got her own following, her own brand, her own public persona. She's been on magazine covers. She's been on red carpets. She's done speaking engagements. She's built an identity that exists separately from her daughter, even though the connection to Beyoncé is always going to be the elephant in the room. And one of the pillars of Mama Tina's personal brand has always been her cooking. Specifically, her gumbo. She's from Galveston, Texas, but her roots run deep into Louisiana culture. And if you know anything about Louisiana culture, you know that gumbo is not just food. Gumbo is identity. Gumbo is heritage. Gumbo is the dish that defines your family. Every household has a recipe, and every household believes theirs is the best. It's sacred in a way that people outside of that culture might not fully appreciate. So when the announcement came that Mama Tina would have a gumbo booth at the 2025 Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, one of the largest and most attended events in the entire state of Texas, pulling in over 2 million visitors across its multi-week run, it was treated like an event within the event. This was supposed to be a moment. A cultural celebration. Beyoncé's own mother, a Louisiana-rooted black woman, serving her family's gumbo recipe to the people of Houston at a venue that represents Texas tradition and community at its core. On paper, it was beautiful. On paper, it was a story you tell your grandkids about. I ate gumbo made by Beyoncé's mama at the rodeo. That's generational bragging rights right there. And at first, the excitement was real. People were lining up. Social media was buzzing. The Bay Hive was out in full force, ready to support. Local Houstonians were curious. Foodies wanted to taste it. Everyone wanted to be part of the moment. But then something started happening that nobody expected. The reviews started coming in. And they were brutal. People were posting videos on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, every platform you can think of, and the consensus was devastating. Person after person after person said the same thing. The gumbo looked like water. The broth was thin, almost translucent, more like a weak soup than anything resembling authentic Louisiana gumbo. The rice was sitting at the bottom like it had given up on life. The overall presentation, for $27 a bowl, was described by one person as looking like someone had rinsed a pot that once had gumbo in it and served the rinse water. Now that's harsh. And I want to be fair here. Food is subjective. What one person considers thin, another person might call a light broth style. There are different gumbo traditions and different consistencies. So initially, you could argue that the reviews were a matter of taste and preference. But the backlash was intense, and it split the internet into two very aggressive camps. On one side, you had people who were genuinely offended by what they received for their money. $27 is not cheap. That's a premium price point. When you charge premium prices, you invite premium scrutiny. And these people felt like they had been ripped off. They felt like the Knowles name was being used to sell an inferior product at an inflated price, banking on celebrity recognition rather than actual quality. On the other side, you had people who saw the criticism as an attack. They saw it as yet another example of the internet tearing down a successful black woman. They pointed out that other food vendors at the rodeo charge high prices too and don't get this level of scrutiny. They argued that the criticism was racially motivated, or at least fueled by a culture that loves to see black women fail. And they rallied around Mama Tina with a ferocity that only the Bay Hive can produce. And honestly, that second perspective is not without merit. There is a real pattern in this country of disproportionate criticism being leveled at black women in business. That's not imaginary. That's documented. That's studied. That's real. But here is where the conversation shifted from subjective opinions about food quality to something that nobody could dismiss or deflect. People weren't just saying the gumbo was bad. People were saying it was making them sick. And not mildly sick. Not a little stomach ache. Not a slight feeling of discomfort that could be attributed to eating at an outdoor event in Texas heat. People were reporting violent illness, vomiting, severe diarrhea, sweating, fever-like symptoms. The kind of physical reaction that tells you something went genuinely wrong inside your body. Multiple reports started surfacing online. Different people, different days, different experiences, all describing similar symptoms after consuming Mama Tina's gumbo. And then the internet, because the internet has absolutely no chill, took it a step further. Some people started accusing Mama Tina of putting hoodoo in the gumbo. Voodoo. Spiritual contamination. Dark energy. The conspiracy theories were flying from every direction. Now I want to be very clear about something. I am not validating any of that. I am not here to discuss curses or spiritual warfare over a bowl of gumbo. That is internet noise. What I am here to discuss are facts, documentation, and what the actual city of Houston found when they went out there and inspected this operation. Because while everyone was arguing about whether the gumbo was merely disappointing or supernaturally tainted, one woman decided to stop arguing and start acting. She called the Houston Health Department. She filed an official complaint. She put her name on it. She put her experience on record. And that single phone call set off a chain of events that blew this entire situation wide open in a way that nobody, especially not the people running that booth, was prepared for. Let me walk you through this step by step because the details matter. Every single one of them. Her name is Erica. She went to the Houston Rodeo with good intentions. In fact, she went specifically because her own mother encouraged her to go support the booth. Her mother told her that they were actually related to the Knowles family on her father's mother's side. She said her family had been invited to the family reunion. This was personal for her. This wasn't some random internet troll looking for clout. This was a woman going to support what she believed was family. She walked up to the booth and immediately noticed something that struck her as odd. There was no line. At the Houston Rodeo, where every attraction and every food vendor typically has people waiting, Mama Tina's gumbo booth had nobody standing in front of it. She asked about it and was told the line had just cleared. But still, at one of the most buzzed about booths at the entire event, at a rodeo that draws millions of visitors, there was no line. That detail matters. And then she noticed the sign, displayed prominently, clear as day. No returns. No refunds. She said no other booth at the rodeo had that sign. Not a single one. Just Mama Tina's. Now ask yourself why a food vendor would need to preemptively tell customers that they cannot get their money back. Why would that sign be necessary unless the people running the operation already knew that customers might want their money back? Unless they already knew there was an issue? That sign tells you everything about the confidence level behind that product. But Erica bought the gumbo anyway. The seafood gumbo. Blue crab, shrimp, chicken, and sausage. $27. She described the consistency as watered down, moving like liquid rather than sitting like a proper thick, hearty gumbo should. It matched every single negative review that had been circulating online. But she'd already spent the money. She wasn't going to waste it. So she ate the meat out of the bowl and discarded the broth and the rice at the bottom because it didn't look right to her. And then she went home. By that evening, her body started sending her signals. Around 10 at night, she started burping. And every burp brought the taste of gumbo back up. Not just a hint. The full, overwhelming taste of that gumbo repeating in her throat and her mouth. Then she got hot. Started sweating. Even though the temperature outside was cool. Her body was doing something it does when it's trying to fight off something it recognizes as a threat. This is your immune system going on high alert. This is your body telling you that something you consumed is not sitting right and it wants it out. And then the nausea hit. She was driving. She had to pull over on the side of the road. Not once. Multiple times. Her mouth was watering uncontrollably. That specific kind of watering that everyone who has ever been truly sick recognizes. It's the warning sign. It's your body's way of preparing you for what's about to happen. And then she vomited. And when she looked down at what had come out of her body, she saw blood. Red. Unmistakable. Blood mixed in with everything else. She said the taste in her mouth was metallic. That sharp, iron-like taste that blood has. Her friend who was with her wanted to call 911. Wanted to get an ambulance out there immediately. And Erica told her no. Not because she didn't think she needed medical attention. Not because she thought she was fine. But because she could not afford the ambulance ride. Because this is the United States of America and a trip in an ambulance can cost you thousands of dollars. And this woman, who just spent $27 on a bowl of gumbo that put her on the side of the road vomiting blood, had to make the calculation in her head about whether her health was worth the financial devastation of an emergency medical bill. That right there should make every single one of you angry regardless of where you stand on Mama Tina, Beyonce, the rodeo, or anything else. A woman was bleeding internally after eating food at a public event, and she couldn't seek emergency medical care because of the cost. That is a failure on multiple levels. But Erica did something that set her apart from every other person who had complained about this gumbo online. She didn't just tweet about it. She didn't just make a TikTok. She went through the official channels. She called the Houston Health Department. She filed a formal complaint. She gave them every detail. The date, the booth, what she ate, what happened to her body, every symptom, every timeline. She put it all on official record. And the health department responded with a speed that tells you they took it seriously. An inspector was dispatched the same day she called. His name was Justin. He didn't wait a week. He didn't schedule a follow-up for the following Monday. He went out to the rodeo grounds that same day. And what Justin and the health department's inspection team found is what elevates this entire situation from internet drama to a legitimate public safety crisis. First finding. The permit application submitted by Mama Tina's operation stated that the gumbo was being prepared at a specific nearby licensed restaurant. A restaurant that had been inspected, approved, and certified by the health department as a safe and compliant facility for food preparation. That is what was written on the paperwork. That is what the permit was granted based on. That is not what was actually happening. The health department discovered that the gumbo was being cooked at a location that was not licensed. Then it was being transferred to a second location that was also not licensed. And then it was being moved again to the rodeo grounds for serving. Let me make sure you understand the gravity of this. The legal document, the permit application, said one thing. The actual practice was something completely different. The gumbo that was served to thousands of paying customers at the Houston Rodeo was being prepared in facilities that the city of Houston had not inspected, had not approved, and had no oversight over. Nobody from the health department had verified the cleanliness of those kitchens. Nobody had checked the equipment. Nobody had confirmed that proper sanitation protocols were being followed. Nobody had ensured that the people handling the food had the required certifications. That alone is a serious violation. But it gets worse. The inspectors found that food items that were supposed to be maintained at frozen temperatures were not frozen, and they could not verify that proper cooling methods were being used for the pre-cooked batches of gumbo before they were transported to the rodeo. If you know anything about food science, and you don't need a degree for this, you just need basic common sense, you know that temperature control is the single most critical factor in preventing foodborne illness. When you're dealing with a dish that contains seafood, specifically blue crab and shrimp, along with chicken and sausage, you are dealing with some of the most temperature-sensitive proteins in existence. The danger zone for bacterial growth sits between 40 degrees and 140 degrees Fahrenheit. In that range, bacteria like Salmonella, E. coli, Vibrio, Clostridium perfringens, and Staphylococcus aureus can multiply exponentially. We're talking about bacterial populations doubling every 20 minutes in some cases. If a batch of pre-cooked gumbo containing seafood, poultry, and pork products is allowed to sit in that danger zone for even a couple of hours during transport between unlicensed facilities, you are essentially creating a biological weapon in a pot. That is not dramatic. That is food microbiology. That is what the science says. And that is exactly the kind of scenario the health department's findings pointed to. So what did the health department do? They shut the booth down. Completely. Immediately. They ordered every single drop of gumbo on the premises to be discarded, thrown away, dumped. They told Mama Tina's operation that they could not serve another bowl to another customer until a completely new permit application was submitted from scratch. A health officer came out to personally verify that food was being prepared properly and in compliance with regulations at an approved location, and all associated fees were paid. That is not a friendly reminder. That is not a gentle nudge. That is a full regulatory shutdown. That is the city of Houston saying we have determined that this food operation poses a risk to public health and it cannot continue. And Erica had the receipts. Literally. She posted the text message she received from Justin, the health department inspector, confirming the findings and the shutdown. It was right there in black and white for the whole world to see. And what do you think happened when she shared this information publicly? Was she thanked? Was she praised for being a responsible citizen who used the proper channels to report a legitimate health concern? Was she recognized for potentially preventing other people from getting seriously ill? No. She was attacked. The internet came for her with a viciousness that was genuinely disturbing to witness. People called her a liar. People said the text message was fabricated. People said she was making it all up for attention. People said she was just jealous of the Knowles family. People accused her of trying to tear down a black woman's business. Some people even tried to invoke HIPAA, claiming that sharing health department communication was some kind of violation. And I need to address this directly because the number of people who confidently threw around the word HIPAA without understanding what it actually means was staggering. HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, governs the privacy of your medical records at healthcare providers, health plans, and healthcare clearinghouses. It has absolutely nothing to do with the health department. Health department inspections, findings, and enforcement actions are public record. Public. As in anyone can request them. Anyone can access them. There is no privacy protection for a food booth's health code violations. That information belongs to the public because the public is the one at risk. And I know this because, as I said, I verified it myself. I called the Houston Health Department. I identified myself. I spoke with a manager. And they confirmed that inspectors visited the rodeo grounds on 2 separate occasions. The final visit occurred on March 17th. And the result of that visit was a shutdown. This is not speculation. This is the city of Houston's own records. Now let me address something else because it kept coming up in the online discourse. People tried to make this about Beyoncé. You just don't like Beyoncé. You're jealous of Beyoncé. This is an attack on Beyoncé. And Erica's response to that completely dismantled the argument. She said she loves Beyoncé. She said her family is actually connected to the Knowles family, related through her father's mother's side. She said they were invited to the family reunion. She went to the Gumbo booth specifically because her own mother told her to go support the family. That's your people, her mother said. They are from Louisiana. Anybody from Louisiana knows how to make gumbo. Go support family. This woman showed up at that booth with love in her heart and $27 in her hand, and she left with blood in her vomit and an 8-tube sample kit from her doctor's office. Because yes, she went to the doctor. She got blood drawn. She was given stool sample kits, 8 separate tubes, to test for bacterial infections, parasitic infections, foodborne pathogens, and everything else that could possibly explain why a healthy woman was throwing up blood hours after eating a bowl of gumbo. She said the results could take up to a week. She also formally requested the official written inspection report from the health department, which, again, she is entitled to as a member of the public. This woman documented every step of her experience. She has the complaint ID number. She has the inspector's name. She has the text message confirmation. She has medical records from her doctor's visit. She has lab work pending. And people still called her a liar. That reaction tells you more about our culture than anything else in this story. It tells you that celebrity proximity has become so powerful, so blinding, that even when the government's own records confirm a food safety violation, people will choose to defend the celebrity and attack the victim. That is a dangerous place for a society to be. Let me talk about what all of this means going forward, because the implications extend far beyond one Gumbo booth at one rodeo. The Houston Rodeo was scheduled to end that Sunday, which means that even if Mama Tina's operation wanted to go through the entire reapplication process, get a new permit, have a health officer come out and verify everything, and pay all the new fees, there was functionally no time left in the rodeo season to accomplish any of that. The booth was done for 2025. Finished. Not coming back. But the bigger question is whether Mama Tina's Gumbo comes back to the rodeo at all. And my honest assessment is that the odds are not good. The negative publicity has been catastrophic. We're not talking about a few bad reviews that can be brushed aside. We are talking about a full health department shutdown that is now permanently part of the public record. We are talking about documented health code violations, including food preparation at unlicensed facilities, permit application discrepancies, and failure to maintain proper temperature controls. We are talking about at least one person with medical documentation of severe illness and pending lab results that could directly link her condition to the food served at that booth. If Erica's lab results come back positive for a foodborne illness, the legal implications become very real. If you can establish that you consumed food that was prepared in violation of health codes, stored improperly, transported through unlicensed and uninspected facilities, and that food caused you to become physically ill to the point of vomiting blood, that is not a frivolous complaint. That is the foundation of a legitimate personal injury claim. The health department's own findings support the fact that the operation was non-compliant. The food was ordered discarded because safe handling could not be verified. The permit did not reflect the actual preparation process. I want to be clear that I am not a lawyer and I am not providing legal advice. But I am someone who can read documentation, follow a chain of evidence, and tell you that the pieces of a very compelling case are sitting right there on the table. And this leads to the conversation that I think is the most important one to have. This is not about Beyoncé. This is not about cancelling the Knowles family. This is not about tearing down black businesses. This is not about hating on anyone. This is about a fundamental principle that should apply to every single person and every single business equally. Food safety is not optional. It is not negotiable. And it is not something you get to skip because you have a famous last name or a famous daughter or a loyal fan base that will defend you no matter what. When you serve food to the public, you enter into an agreement, an unspoken contract. You are telling people that what you are handing them is safe to eat, that it was prepared in a clean, inspected facility, that temperature protocols were followed, that the ingredients were handled properly, that what's on your permit application reflects what is actually happening behind the scenes. And when that agreement is broken, when those standards are not met, real people suffer real consequences. Erica was a healthy woman who went to enjoy the rodeo and support what she believed was a family business. She ended up on the side of the highway at night, vomiting blood, unable to afford an ambulance. And she was not the only one. Multiple people reported illness. She was simply the one who refused to stay silent about it. She was the one who picked up the phone, called the health department, went through the official process, went to a doctor, submitted to lab work, and documented everything while the internet tried to tear her apart for doing so. That woman deserves respect, not ridicule. Because the next person to get sick from an improperly handled food operation might not be a healthy adult who can recover. The next person might be a child whose immune system isn't fully developed. The next person might be an elderly individual who doesn't have the physical resilience to fight off a serious bacterial infection. The next person might be someone who is immunocompromised, going through chemotherapy, or dealing with a chronic condition that makes foodborne illness potentially fatal. That is why health codes exist. That is why permits exist. That is why inspectors like Justin respond same day to complaints and go out there and do their job even when the name on the booth belongs to someone powerful. And when you look at it through that lens, this story is actually the system working exactly as it should. A citizen experienced harm. She reported it through proper channels. The government agency responsible for food safety responded immediately. They investigated. They found violations. They took enforcement action. The unsafe product was removed from public access. That is government accountability in action. That is what our tax dollars are supposed to pay for. And Erica is the reason it happened in this case. People who attacked her online owe her an apology. And people who reflexively defended the booth without knowing the facts owe themselves a moment of honest reflection about why they prioritized a celebrity's reputation over a citizen's health and safety. Let me also address something that's been lurking in the background of this whole discussion. The rodeo itself has a responsibility here too. The Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo is a massive organization. They vet their vendors. They approve applications. They are supposed to have oversight over what happens on their grounds. The question of how a food operation was allowed to function with a permit that didn't match its actual preparation process at a venue of this size and significance is a question that the rodeo's organizers need to answer. Were there spot checks? Was there any independent verification that the food preparation locations listed on the permit were actually being used? What is the rodeo's own internal process for ensuring vendor compliance? Because if the answer is that they simply trust the information on the application without verifying it, that is a systemic vulnerability that could affect any vendor at the event, not just this one. This situation should prompt a serious review of how food vendors are monitored at the Houston Rodeo specifically, and at large-scale public events generally. Because if this can happen with the most high-profile, most scrutinized booth at the entire event, imagine what might be happening at booths that nobody is paying attention to. So where does this leave us? Mama Tina's Gumbo at the 2025 Houston Rodeo is over. The booth was shut down. The Gumbo was discarded. The permit was revoked pending a complete reapplication process that cannot realistically be completed before the rodeo ends. The health department's findings are on public record. At least one individual has medical documentation and pending lab results. The court of public opinion is divided, but the court of actual documented evidence is not. If there is a silver lining in any of this, it is that the system worked. A complaint was filed. An investigation was conducted. Violations were found. Action was taken. The public was protected from further exposure. But it should never have gotten to this point in the first place. Proper food handling, licensed facilities, accurate permit applications, and temperature control are not optional extras. They are the bare minimum. They are the baseline. They are the non-negotiable foundation of serving food to the public. And that standard has to apply to everyone. Whether your last name is Knowles or Johnson or Smith or anything else. Whether your daughter fills stadiums or fills out spreadsheets. Whether you have 1 million followers or 12. The bacteria in improperly stored gumbo does not care about your Instagram following. Salmonella does not check your Wikipedia page. E. coli is not a member of the Bay Hive. Food safety is universal. Accountability is universal. And the consequences of failing to meet basic standards are universal too. Accountability is not hate. Accountability is love. Because holding people to the same standard you would hold anyone else to is one of the most respectful things you can do. It says, I believe you are capable of doing better. It says, I believe this standard matters. It says, I believe the people you serve deserve the same care and attention that any other customer at any other establishment deserves. And on that note, I genuinely want to hear what all of you think about this. Do you think Mama Tina should attempt a comeback at the rodeo next year with proper facilities and full compliance? Or is this the kind of situation where you take the loss, learn the lesson, and move forward in a different direction? If Erica's lab results confirm a foodborne illness, do you believe she should pursue legal action? And what does it say about our culture that a woman who followed every proper channel, filed official complaints, went to the doctor, documented everything, and had her account confirmed by the city of Houston was still called a liar by thousands of people simply because the booth had a famous name attached to it? Those are the questions I want you to sit with. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and I respond to as many as I can. If you made it all the way to the end of this one, you already know what to do. Hit that like button. Hit subscribe. Turn on notifications so you never miss a video, because these stories are only going to keep getting bigger and more important, and I need you in this community to have these conversations. I appreciate every single one of you who rocks with me. It means more than you know. I hope you have an incredible rest of your day. And if you want to hear about some of the other absolutely wild things that have gone down at the Houston Rodeo over the years, because believe me, this event has a history of scandals that would blow your mind, that video is waiting for you right now. Check out the suggested video, and I will see you in the next one.